Welcome back to Fantasy Baseball Camp. This is episode 36, waiver wire for week 16 if you're on a long week. Today on the camp, we've got myself, Tommy Lombard, and we've got Sir Wesley, as Michael would address you. Shorter camp today, but doesn't mean that the quality is any lesser. We've got some exciting names for you today. See what we can bring to you. Wes, how are you doing?
Man, a little tired. Been a long day, but there's still baseball games going on, so I'll stay up until these, stop going, or I fall asleep. One of the two.
I will say with the new schedule, I complain a lot because we don't get to watch baseball till 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. But every once in a while, like tonight, it's like, okay, I'm kind of tired.
Yeah,
Wouldn't mind games ending at 10 o'clock.
I think we do have to call out the breaking news today. We talked about it yesterday, and texted about it today. But we did put out a recent episode that was about a Japanese pitcher player that where we thought he would go. So we got some breaking news today that there was a Japanese pitcher traded to the Orioles. It just wasn't Shohei Ohtani. So tell us about that, Tommy.
What is it? Fujinami? Is that his name?
Fujinami.
Yeah, he's a starting pitcher / relief pitcher. Signed that at Japan on a 1-year, $10 million deal from the Oakland Athletics. They gave him a chance to start. He didn't really pan out. Now he's a relief pitcher and traded to the Baltimore Orioles.
From Oakland.
It was a great teaser because I was like, guys, the Japanese pitcher from California got traded.
I know. I saw like the Bleacher Report notification come up on my phone, and it was like Japanese pitcher to the Orioles. I was like, whoa, no way. Yeah, it wasn't Ohtani though.
So I think what's going to happen is Oakland is a dumpster fire. They have no idea how to handle stuff, and Baltimore has been really good with pitching recently in the last couple of years. Will turn him to a great 6th, 7th inning man. I mean, they've got Cano and Bautista, so they have an 8th and 9th inning guy, but I think he'll do really well there. I don't think he'll be a fantasy asset, so it's not much for us to talk about, but I think he'll be good for them, bad for my Red Sox. One more part of the division I don't want to deal with.
He'll be a good good bullpen piece. He might be like a long relief type for them, but as far as fantasy goes, it doesn't really have much implications on fantasy value.
So who do you have that can help us out with our fantasy teams this week?
Yeah, so the first guy I got is going to be Eduard Julian with Minnesota. So Julian has scored 24.5 points so far this week, and over his last 3 games, he's gone 6 for 11. He's 23% owned in CBS leagues, so widely available. And he's, he was a top prospect coming up. He got a little taste of the big leagues early on for a few weeks. He went back down to the minor leagues. He's come up and he's struggled a little bit, but the last 2 weeks, week 14, he scored 25 points, and week 15, again, he scored 21.5 points. Second base is that position where it's just real hard to find consistency, consistent point scorers. Jimenez didn't really pan out. Now he's been hot lately. We talked about him last week. Luis Ariz has been pretty good, but second base has just been kind of a weird position all year. And if you're in need or you need a utility spot, I'd look at Julian. He's a good hitter. He has some good metrics in the minor leagues. Got some good scouting grades. So excited about him. I don't think he's going to be, a top 5 second baseman, but definitely a serviceable guy if you need a second base position field.
Yeah, and I think he'll be serviceable in both leagues, but I think in points league he's supposed to be more favorable because of his plate discipline, right?
Yeah, he's got some pretty good plate discipline, especially in the minor leagues. I don't have it up. I'm trying to pull it up right now.
I don't think it's completely translated to the majors yet, but it's a hard leap going from AA, AAA to the majors. So we see that with a lot of players. They're a stud, and it takes them a month or two, or even a year or two to translate. I think he'll be, in the near term, serviceable, but in the long term, a top 12 second baseman for the Twins. I mean, decent lineup around them normally. I don't ever think he'll be a superstar, but I think he'll be rostered, a must roster player long term.
Yeah, in the minor leagues, like his track record is pretty good. I mean, he averaged like a 24% strikeout rate in the minor leagues, which is above average, and then he walked almost 20% of the time. So, he has a good eye at the plate. I think he's learning what pitches to swing at, at the major league level. And he's striking out almost 32%, even with the last 2 weeks. So I think he's just going through some, typical bumps and bruises at the major league level, but looks like he's starting to really figure it out.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great pick. Good one to lead us off. I too am going to pick a rookie, someone coming up. Is he technically still a rookie? Mickey Moniak? I think he's a rookie, right?
Technically is in his rookie season, yes, but he surpassed the at-bats.
Yeah, so Mickey Moniak is my pick. He's an outfielder for the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. This year slashing a great slash number, 336, 369, 645. Yes, his slugging is 645. Granted, it's a smaller sample size because he hasn't been playing all year. But he does have 11 home runs in that time frame, and he's basically playing every day with Mike Trout being out. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Hunter Renfroe get traded because he's in a 1-year deal as well. So that would free up even more time, even if Trout does come back. He was the first overall pick back in 2016 by the Phillies, so he's got the pedigree. I think we've even talked about him on here before, but he just keeps on playing. He's got 11 home runs right now. I will say one ding on him: he's got 49 strikeouts to 5 walks at this time, so he's not walking much. You can tell from the slash line; it's like 30-point difference in the average and on base. But with his power, he's got speed. He's going to play every day, and definitely if you're in a 15-team league or 5 outfielder league, he's a must roster, must add. Even if it's a points league, I say he's right on the fringe of the 3 outfielder points league. He's right on the fringe of who you want to start, just because that slugging percentage is incredible right now, and you get a lot of your points in a points league from slugging.
Yeah, and he was a guy that we kind of felt like would eventually fall off, and he just hasn't. I mean, he's continuously hit. He's pretty athletic, so I feel like he can maintain the level of production the rest of the year. I mean, we thought he was gonna drop off. He's got the first overall pick pedigree. Obviously that once you get to the major leagues, that kind of goes away. But obviously scouts saw something in Moniak. He didn't really make much noise in the minor leagues like we thought he would, but he's really found a home in LA. It looks like. I love his swing. I love watching him play, man. He's just a really athletic guy.
Yeah, I mean, you don't get picked first overall by being a little tubby wubby. Do you think if he inevitably will struggle? I know he has in the past, but everybody goes through a slump if they come out hot. They eventually go through a struggle. Do you think the Angels will let him ride, give him time to find his way out of the slump, or do they have people ready to replace him? I know Joe Adell's name keeps on coming up. They've called up White Horse or whatever from the Double-A team. I should know that their trash painters are right down the road, but I don't. That's bad on me. Something like.
No, I think that's a decent question. For me, I think, like you said, Renfroe is a trade candidate. Trout's been hurt. Shohei's probably going to get traded. I mean, I think he's going to get consistent playing time. And I think the Angels are, I mean, what do they have to lose at this point? They might as well, give him full playing time and give him the reins, start him every day, and just, let's see where it goes from there. I mean, at this point, what do they have to lose, right? I mean, they have Taylor Ward, Renfroe, Adell, Trout. And Cabbage is a guy they just called up.
Cabbage. That's who I was thinking of.
That's who it was. And, look, I don't see a reason why they wouldn't play Moniak every day, even being a left-handed hitter. He's shown that he can make contact and put the ball in play. So against lefties, I'm saying. So I don't see a reason why they wouldn't.
Yeah, as we record this on July 19th, we're 21 days out from the trade deadline. 11 days out from the trade deadline. My math skills are horrible tonight. There are like 7 guys, I don't have it pulled up. I think there's 7 games out of the wild card, and they're even worse than that in the division. I don't see a scenario where they're not sellers of the team, which, like you said, or I said, we also talked about Renfroe getting traded. It opens up opportunities. And I think there's a no-brainer. Let this guy play, see what they got going to next year if they want to make him a full-time guy. So I think fantasy managers can sit somewhat content knowing he's going to get playing time, and hopefully he can work his way from the struggles when they come and be ready for the playoff times for them.
Yeah, and just looking at his splits, I mean, versus righties, he's hitting 365. So that's,
That's
I mean, that's insane. That's pretty. I mean, that's obviously well above league average, right? He is hitting 067 against lefties, but they haven't given
oof.
him much opportunity to hit against lefties. So
Yeah, 15 at bats versus lefties, win 137 against right. I didn't realize he platooned that much, but he's still getting a lot of at bats. I think when I looked it up earlier, he was in the game log last. Come on, 4 at bats, 4 5 5 4 4 4 4. I mean, every day, at least over the
yeah,
last since Trout went down, he's been an everyday guy.
yeah. I mean, honestly, looking at his splits, I mean, May he was 327, June 310, July 378. Like, I don't know, man. If it's me and I'm the Angels, play the guy every day. Like I wouldn't even worry about the splits at this point in time. I know he's lefty on lefty. He hasn't shown to be great, but I mean, if you look at his minor league track record, it gives him reason. It gives you reason to believe that he can be successful at the major league level.
Yeah, I think he will be. It's good information here. What do you got, Wes? What do you got for another guy?
Yeah, so the second guy I'm going to talk about, and I've mentioned him once or twice before, but I'm officially saying it's time to pick up Spencer Torkelson. Spencer Torkelson, man, neither of us can talk tonight.
Tongue-tied
And
Torkelson.
I think he's officially a legit fantasy option, and he's going to stay that way. You don't get picked first overall, Golden Spikes Award winner, highest bonus ever in the draft, 70 raw power, 60 hitter coming out of the draft. All of that to say that it's just taken him a long time to get where he's at. And I honestly believe that he's finally turned the corner. He's taken that next step, and he's going to be a perennial guy that we're talking about every year at first base. If you're like me, and I mentioned this last week, I'm still in need of a first baseman. I spent my draft, in other positions. We're in a dynasty league, and I've struggled to find a first baseman that was available in the last few years. So, man, Spencer Torkelson, love watching the guy play. And we've talked about it. The Tigers are looking, appeasing in the Central. So, I do want to say one other thing about Torque though. On April 12th, he had a rolling 30-day average OPS of 461. From that day, it has not been below that. And as of this week, his 30-day rolling OPS is 841. All right. League average is 730. Right. So I know the average is still at 237, but he's found his power stroke. He's hitting gap to gap. Now, we still want there's still more power in there for him. I don't think that he's hitting as many home runs as we expect out of him, but he's starting to find his power stroke. And I'm really excited about the things that we're going to get from Torque the remainder of this season and going into 2024.
Yeah, I didn't realize that he was that. I knew he had a bad April, but 461 OPS is that's about as bad as it gets. So he basically did nothing the first couple weeks of the season. And 841 OPS is pretty good. That's something I hadn't really looked into. I've got a couple of first base options, so I haven't spent a lot of time in that division. But yeah, I mean, the pedigree stands for itself. He, like you mentioned, first round pick, and every grade, every scout was there. So I think it was only a matter of time. He was probably one of the least likely prospects to fail. While he was failing early, this may be the start of his breakout for him being a top 7, 8 first baseman in dynasty leagues. What do you think? Not today, but eventually.
I mean, even today, I would say like he's probably at least top 10 for me, if not top 7. I mean, if we go down the list, right? Goldie, Freeman. I mean, Freeman's probably number 1. Goldie's probably number 2. Alonso 3. Christian Walker's in there. Vlad's in there. Matt Olson's in there. 3. That's what 5, 6. Outside of those guys, like who are you looking at, right? Like a Josh Naylor, maybe. Yeah, you can make an argument there, but like, who else are you looking at there? Maybe Cody Bellinger, but he doesn't play first base much anymore.
Yeah.
So Nate Lowe, like, man, I don't know. I would think I would put Torque probably 7 in between, maybe 8 right after Nate
Would
Lowe.
would you put him over Spencer Steer?
I would. I think long term, I would. I would say second half of this year and into 2024, I would put Torque ahead of Steer. I like Steer. I just don't think he has the same pedigree that Torkelson does. So that, for me, leads me to believe that Torque can have a longer sustained success, whereas Steer, I keep feeling like he's just going to fall off at some point, you know?
Yeah, I keep on forgetting how top heavy the first base category or position is. I was just looking at some rankings, and yeah, after like Christian Walker, Spencer Steer, no disrespect for Luis Rise, it goes downhill pretty quick.
Yeah, man.
He's a good baseball player. He's not a huge fantasy asset other than batting average.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's for sure top 10. And we could argue where he falls otherwise.
Yeah, and I mean, we're talking about guys like Yandy Diaz that started the year like number 2 at the first base position. Like, man, he has fallen off. I mean, it's been a steady downhill production for Yandy. Like, he's stopped hitting home runs, man. Like, he's still at 13. I mean, at one point in time, he was like, what, number 2 in home runs?
He was top
Yeah,
5 point scoring probably for the
yeah.
first month.
So I will say Josh Naylor has kind of come into his own, though. He probably deserves more credit than we're giving him. Josh Naylor might be top 5 first baseman by the end of the year.
It's a bold prediction. He's having a hot week. I think that may be part of your bias. Other than that,
True,
he's
but I
less
mean,
he's less than a 20-point average player.
he's still hitting above 311. I mean, he is hitting 311. I'm sorry, above 300. He's hitting 311. I mean, he's got 15 home runs. And you know, the thing I like about Naylor is he does not strike out for the position. Like, you look at the strikeout numbers at the position, and it's Freddie's at 75, Matt Olson's at 112, 67, 65, 90. Josh Naylor's at 52 for the same area of at bats.
He does have a lot of splits. He's got 85 at bats against lefties, 231s against righty. Now the league is righty bias, so you're always going to have more
Yeah,
at bats against righties. But that does tell me he does platoon there, so that some cause for concern. But even then, I mean, his against lefties, he's hitting 271, 303, 471. That makes it a 774 OPS for your bad side. That's pretty good. Your bad
man.
pitching matchup. That's above league average. So 900 OPS against righties. Yeah. He's another one who's quietly off the radar and a bonus pick for a waiver wire, I guess.
Yeah, for me, I mean, Josh Naylor is kind of like under the radar guy that you could trade for if you're in need of a first baseman. Yeah, I like him. I don't know that I could get him. I think the guy in our league that has him probably wouldn't give him up, but
Yeah, 98% rostered. He's not going to be a waiver wire pickup now that I think about it.
no.
He would have to be a trade candidate, but you probably don't have to pay much for him. So it's a pretty good one.
No, I think that's the thing, right? Is I think you can buy a Josh Naylor without giving up that much. And if you look at his stats in comparison to Spencer Steer, like, their stats are almost identical, and Josh Naylor has actually outperformed Steer in almost every category except on base percentage. And that's only because Spencer Steer's walked twice as much, but Josh Naylor's struck out 20 less times. So, man, I mean, think about it. What would you have to give up for Spencer Steer versus Josh Naylor?
More. I don't know off the top of my head, but Steer just his name has been in the media more. He's a hotter name. He's in the Reds. He gets more attention. So I think infinitesimally would have to give up more for Steer than Josh Naylor. Contracts aside, depending on what kind of league you play in.
Right.
Call it a redraft.
Yeah. If we're talking dynasty, who would you rather have?
I don't know. Coin flip. I
Yeah, I
Steer
don't know.
hasn't
That's
been here
tough,
long
man.
enough. Steer hasn't been here long enough, but Naylor's been here long enough that we've seen him, and it's not overly impressive. Both of them could break out at any day. I don't think there's a bad option there. Maybe Steer for the upside, just because the unknown. Sometimes it's easier to go with, but not by much.
Yeah, I would say if Steer gets traded, I would want Naylor, but as long as Steer is in Cincinnati and plays half his games there, I might want Steer long term. I don't know. That's tough. That's a good one though.
Yep, that's a good one. So just like you said you struggled to find a first baseman this year. I went thin on my relief pitching, and I've paid for it. I've got Bednar in there full time, and he was hot at the start of the season. But he's kind of hit or miss because the Pirates don't win anymore. And other than that, my relief pitching has been a revolving door. So my waiver wire pick, number 2 for this week, is Aroldis Chapman. Yes, that Aroldis Chapman, former Yankees closer, fell off, went to the Royals, but was recently traded to the Texas Rangers. And we've talked about it before, but it wasn't until this past week where their manager, Bruce Bochy, said he would be sharing the closing role with the other former lefty, or fellow lefty, Will Smith. So I think that's going to hurt Will Smith's value. It's going to help Aroldis Chapman's value. He threw 103 the other day, so he's got his form back. I think he topped out at 97 last year towards the end. He kind of fell apart. On the season, he's got a 2.04 ERA and a 1.08 WHIP, both fantastic. So if he's going to get a share of the closing job with Texas, that holds some value. It's somebody I don't own him, but I'm thinking about picking him up. And you never know, maybe Will Smith falls off and he gets the job full time. The other thing about that is that the relief pitching market until the trade deadline is just going to be stale. Things are going to
Yeah.
shuffle. Relief pitchers always get traded. But for the next 2 weeks, if you need some saves, Chapman may give you 1 or 2 per week.
Yeah, and he really looked like he was back to his old form during his save the other night. And like you said, he touched 103. I mean, I think every pitch he threw except like 2 were 100 or more. And his slider looked unhittable. I mean, it was nasty. It looked, vintage Aroldis Chapman. And that's really exciting. So for me, I picked him up, when the day he got traded, in anticipation that the Rangers that Boch might make him the closer, but that was never announced, so I dropped him. But I mean, if I'm a betting man, I know Bochy said, yeah, he's going to play the matchups with Smith and Chapman, but they're both lefties, and look, if you're being honest, like a Chapman at 103 in vintage self with that stuff is just a better pitcher than Will Smith. That's not to take credit away from Will Smith. He's been serviceable, but he's certainly, I wouldn't say that he's been a lockdown, shutdown closer. Would you
So would you say it's
agree?
fair that it's probably Will Smith's job still, but it
Yeah.
won't be long before Chapman maybe takes it over?
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is I think Will Smith has a short leash, and any type of blips, I think it would end up Chapman's job. If you're in a playoff game, who do you pick? Will Smith or Aroldis Chapman?
Yeah, if we're
Like
saying vintage,
crunch time, right?
if we're saying vintage Chapman, I'm going to go with vintage 103 Chapman with a wipeout slider.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
depends what we get that back. He fell off for a reason, and he lost his job, and he went to the Royals for a reason. So hopefully those days are behind him, and he's going to be the stud again. But we'll find out.
yeah, man. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that one plays out. Honestly,
Do you have another name for us?
yeah. I got a pitcher. Being only 2 of us here tonight, I want to give the listeners both hitters and pitchers because let's be honest, there's just not that many pitchers out there. It's pretty thin at the starting pitcher position. So, Brennan Bilak, I hope I'm pronouncing that one right. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce that one correctly.
I think I've heard it Belak, but I'm not an
Bilak,
expert on that one.
yeah. So he has, since he returned from AAA, he has a 1.03 ERA with a .85 WHIP in his last few starts. Houston's rotation has been decimated, man. Urquidy went down. McCullers never came back. Um, Obviously, they lost Verlander in the offseason. Framber Valdez went out again, I think, today with a calf injury. So, JP France and Brandon Bielak look like they just have secure rotation spots. And, he's been pretty good the last few starts. So I'm really kind of buying into him. Against Colorado, he went 2 hits and 4 Ks. He did give up 4 walks, which, that's he's had 2 or 3 games where he's given up 3 or 4 walks, but outside of that, most of his starts are 1 walks or 2 walks or less. And even his last start against Seattle, on the 9th, he went 5 innings, 4 hits, 2 earned runs. Didn't score many points, but he didn't pitch terribly. The counting stats don't really show you. They don't really correlate to the fantasy points scored in that one. He is 15% owned, and he is also relief pitcher eligible. So if you need a spark, maybe you need a relief pitcher like you're talking about. Houston is a good team, and you know what? Honestly, I just trust what they do with their pitchers. I mean, it seems like every pitcher they bring up somehow contributes and somehow figures it out at the major league level, man. I don't know. It's like them and the Dodgers. Like every pitcher they bring up, you're like, wow, who is this guy? Where did he come from?
So he's got on the season through 10 games, 11 appearances, he's got a 3.79 ERA and a 147 WHIP, and some of that was a lot earlier in the season. And you said recently it's basically a 1 and a .85. Where do you think that lies? Because he's not pitching to a 1. I mean, he won't do that long term. Do you think he's more of a 3.8 ERA guy, or do you think he's somewhere in the middle of that?
I don't think he's a sub 3.5 ERA guy. He's got good stuff. He doesn't have, blow away pure strikeout stuff. So yeah, I would say a 3.7 is probably where I expect him. I could see him in the 3.5 range, but I also don't think that he's going to be a 4+ ERA guy because Houston just teaches their guys how to pitch, and they manage it very well. They have Maldonado behind the plate, and he calls a great game. He steals a lot of strikes for him, gets a lot of advantages, and they have a great defense. So a lot of advantages for the Houston pitchers. So, am I expecting him to go out and strike out 8, 9 guys? No. He pitches to contact a lot. So he is a guy where I would see a mid to upper threes ERA is probably where I'd see him sit. Maybe a 1.3 WHIP.
Yeah, I'm just looking at his game log. He really has like 2 bad games that keep that inflating his numbers. He went from a 3.34 ERA, and then over 2 games he jumped up to a 3.73. Or excuse me, 4.37. So lost the whole ERA in 2 games. That really hurts you when you put up 10 earned runs over a 2-game span and barely go 5 innings each time. So yeah, I think he's probably got a 3.8 ERA guy, and hopefully he can bring that WHIP down. That one definitely tends to hurt you in a points league, but overall, with pitching as thin as it is, I like that pick. So my final pick is someone the most rostered out of everybody here, and his name you've probably heard, but if you haven't heard it so far, I'm going to talk about it. And it's Christian Encarnacion-Strand. He's the final 3-headed monster, or maybe it's a 10-headed monster at this point for the Reds prospects we talked about all season. In 67 games in the minors, he hit 331, 405, 637. It's over 1,000 OPS. He had 20 home runs in just 67 games. That's incredible pace. You put that over 150 game pace, it's probably like a 50 game pace or something like that. His Fangraphs grades were 60 grade raw game power and a 70 grade raw power. His hit tool is not impressive. He's really just there for his power, but home run scores a lot of points in fantasy. I think there's a chance for him to platoon in the near term. They're basically one spot. I'm sure they got 10 players they want to play every day and only 9 spots to do it with. A trade could be part of that. That could just, kick somebody out of the infield and have Spencer or outfield and go to Spencer Steer full time out there. But being in that lineup, he makes it so much more deep. That's a power threat. I really like CES.
think they're gonna find a way to get him in the lineup one way or another. And I just feel like there's too much opportunity there for him to drive in runs. His his strikeout rate in the minors was, and his play discipline was pretty. I'm not gonna say terrible, but it wasn't good in the minor leagues to start the year. And then you just see this like steady trend getting better like every game, and it became really good. It actually became one of his strengths in the minor leagues in AAA. So I think it was time that he recognized how to manage the strike zone. He stopped swinging at pitches outside of the strike zone, and because of that, he was able to tap into his raw power a lot more frequently. And hopefully that's what you're going to see at the major league level. If you watched, it was last night. I think he hit his first home run, and he hit it on a pitch where it was a pretty good pitch. It was a slider, and he ended up hitting it out to left. And man, it went a long way. Real excited about him, man.
Yeah, it's exciting for your first career hits a home run. I mean, you never forget your first hit period, but a home run, a go-ahead home run to put you ahead in the lead. They end up losing that game, I think, but none less exciting for yourself in your first career MLB hit. Did you see the video of the guy who caught the ball?
Yeah, man. He caught the ball, and man, I've never seen anybody be so excited about catching a baseball.
He was losing his mind.
He was, man. And I don't know. I mean, I get it. You think about the two guys for the Reds that hit home runs and the guys that caught the baseballs. So when Ellie hit his first home run, the kid that caught that baseball was just stoked. I mean, it almost went out of Great American Ballpark. And then, the guy that caught CES's, what do you want to call him? Christian Encarnacion-Strand's home run. I mean, this guy caught it, and it's a middle-aged man that looked like a 16-year-old kid. It's pretty awesome.
Well, he knows he's getting a signed bat, some tickets, a glove, maybe whatever it may be, to get that ball back. So we're coming up on time here, Wes. Do you have anything else to add? Any last minute surprises for us? Sneak peeks?
Yeah, man. I guess fantasy wise, just pay attention to the news, Twitter, whatever. You're gonna start seeing some trade news. Trade rumors, I guess I should say. And there's always those guys out there that are on lesser teams, let's call them, that will be traded and make them more fantasy relevant. And we talked about a few of them last week. Go back and watch that episode if you hadn't had a chance to. Somebody like a Dylan Cease, increases his value going from a White Sox to, maybe let's call it a Yankees or a Dodgers or whoever, right? I would say some of the best moves you can make are at the trade deadline in fantasy, because you get that increased value from guys that weren't able to score many points on a bad team and now are on a good team.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think sometimes it's the guys who don't get traded who can add their value the most too. Most notably closers.
Yeah.
When Chapman got traded to the Rangers, Barlow became the lockdown closer for the Royals. So when Bednar got traded from the Pirates, not that they're going to win many games, somebody's going to become the full-time closer there. I'm trying to think of other examples, but then also times like if Renfroe from the Angels goes, Mickey Moniak gets full-time, or somebody else that they call up from.
Exactly the scenario I was about to say, right?
Who's it? To the White Sox, trade Luis Robert. Somebody's going to get time. And so maybe there's a prospect that you've been eyeballing, you got on your fantasy team. Just call him up, and he'll get the time by not getting traded.
Yeah, that's anything a great call out. That's a great call out, man. Sometimes it's the guy that hasn't had the chance to start that now is fantasy relevant because he's going to start every day. So
yeah, and we'll keep you in the loop with those as those trades come on. We'll talk about them. We may have some emergency podcasts for the big trades, and we'll talk about the impacts across the league.
Yeah, and if Ohtani gets traded, we'll have a podcast in the middle of the workday. So
yeah, I'll go home if I'm not working from home. All right. Well, that has been episode 36. It's our waiver wire to get you ready for week 16. For Wes, BNB_Wes, I'm Tommy, BNB_Lombard. Thank you for listening to The Camp.